why do you think people like bounty hunters? What fascinates audiences to like these bounty hunter characters whenever they see them in TV shows, movies, read them in a book, read about them in a book?
I think because it kind of, you're that force of law, or not even law, just you're the guy that goes out there and takes guys down, you answer to no one but yourself, and you get paid money for it.
Exactly. It's kind of like the local law enforcement wasn't tough enough to catch this criminal.
Yeah,
like, he's
exactly.
so elusive they have to hire someone who specializes in tracking down, villains or criminals, or even in the case of Star Wars, good guys. You're that guy that represents, the law kind of in this form, but at the same time, it's like you kind of have this pass to do whatever you want. Like you can go into a building and just ransack the place, and it's okay as long as you get the criminal.
It's like, okay, it's okay, I'm a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay,
everyone
that's
totally
fine.
understands at that point what's going on.
Yeah.
That's why they hire bounty hunters.
I mean, it's kind of like the law. You're kind of like Judge Dredd, but you're kind of still outside the law.
See, when I think of bounty hunters, I think of older stuff. Well, this is Judge Dredd time, I guess, like Briscoe County Jr.
You lose.
Well, for me, I guess the kind of bounty hunters that you think of these days are like Dog the Bounty Hunter, where they've got the pepper spray. They're like, "Get him down, praise Christ."
I feel like Dog the Bounty Hunter though is kind of like a poor representation because he's tracking down just people that are just like hiding out. More or less. They're not like these hardened criminals like you expect, like in the Star Wars universe. I mean, we look at when bounty hunters were first introduced to us in Empire Strikes Back. Think about how there was like this elite crack team standing on the deck of the Star Destroyer.
Like the half dozen strangest looking guys we'd ever seen in Star Wars.
And Darth Vader's telling them, you cannot disintegrate them. That shows you they're
badass
brutal.
Are they? No disintegrations.
No disintegrations. They're that brutal. They're just like, okay, disintegration grenade, bomb, whatever we want to do,
And, it just took, one line versus look at Boba Fett and be like,
he's
that's
hardcore.
the guy right there.
He is hardcore. And from there on, people just loved him.
No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Lord Vader. My lord, we have them.
When it comes to the Star Wars universe, there's a lot of different bounty hunters. There's a plethora of bounty hunters, you might say.
Oh yeah, and they're just adding more every time.
They keep adding more, and one that I recently discovered is Cad Bane. And I find him very intriguing. I don't know if it's just because of his 10-gallon Western hat or his dual pistols or the massive trench coat that he wears.
And you've only seen the last episode of season 1. Yeah. You haven't even seen season 2 where he's huge.
Got a glimpse of him, and I played with his action figure.
Oh, well, that goes a long way too.
But I mean, there's plenty of other, like, what are some bounty hunters that jump out in your mind when you think of that, and why do you enjoy it, or why are they so intriguing to you?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the half dozen guys that were featured in Empire Strikes Back on the Executor. That's what it was, the ship that they were on. But then, I mean, they had the whole book series. There was the Tales of the Bounty Hunters, I think, and there was the Bounty Hunter Wars. I didn't even get into those. I'm going to now, though, because they're trying to pull a lot of those archetypes into the Old Republic to kind of build new characters. But from the Clone Wars era, I think they've got some really interesting guys, like the Cad Bane that you mentioned already. He's kind of a cross between a hard-boiled noir detective and a Clint Eastwood, good and the bad and the ugly type of cowboy. And then you got Aura Singh, who people only got to see for maybe half a second.
Frames.
Yeah, 3 frames in episode 1.
Yeah.
And she was supposed to be this big character that was going to come back and be one of the big presences in the prequel trilogy. That didn't happen, obviously.
Yeah, nothing. And she was supposed to be like this Jedi killer, so to speak. And that was what she was going to do. But yeah, they never brought her back. But
we got her in the comics, and it was good. But now in the Clone Wars, they're really bringing her back big time, and she is just that. She makes the other bounty hunters look wimpy compared to her. She really does. She's ruthless. But even guys like Bosk, the big Trandoshan, I think he is.
One with Houndstooth.
Yeah.
I think of guys like Zuckuss. I don't know what it is. It's something about his insect look.
Well, he's tiny, but he's gonna come at you.
Yeah. And then he's always running around with Forlom, which is kind of like
Zach.
He was like an assassin droid, and then there was IG-88.
Oh, IG-88. Yeah, that was one of my high school buddies' favorite assassins.
And it seems like the bounty hunters are heavily influenced by the Mandalorians. Like, you look at Boba Fett, obviously he wears Mandalorian armor, which is kind of out of place in the original trilogy. Like, we don't see a bunch of Mandalorians running around or anything like that. But
yeah, we were kind of left to wonder what was up with that, because you could tell it was special, but at the same time a little cobbled together.
Yeah, but actually in the Old Republic, it's going to be a big deal. And I mean, we've seen a glimpse of the Mandalorian from the Deceived trailer. They don't talk a lot about her, but she's a bounty hunter, we know that. And she kind of fits that role, and she has a lot of characteristics that are similar to Boba Fett.
Yeah, she's referred to as the Mandalorian in the book Deceived, and we see her in the video trailer of Deceived. But then we've got the other character of Mandalore that they talk about in some of the timeline videos, and then on the HoloNet itself, they talk about the current Mandalore. So I'm really wondering how they're gonna keep the bounty hunter from being just a plain Mandalorian like you are Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Keep it from being that.
Or how each person will be able to kind of like mold after all the other bounty hunters in the Star Wars universe. Like, we don't want a bunch of people running around, like you're saying, that are just kind of like clones of Boba Fett.
Exactly.
I mean,
we've already seen that.
Yeah, we have. And and like we've looked at they came out with the armor progression video about a year ago.
Yeah,
and
it was about a year ago.
Of all the things that we've seen in that so far, they've reflected just kind of different variations of Mandalorian armor.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see maybe an armor progression video for the bounty hunter, so we can see the two different. I said armor progression, but I meant class progression.
Yeah.
The AC, how it branches off, like we've seen for the Jedi Knight and the Warrior, and anybody else, the Trooper.
Yeah.
That's what we saw last.
And I'd like to see them, distinguish the difference between the two AC classes, so that a way you can feel like you can have more of the role of someone like Cad Bane or a Singh, and you don't always have to fit the stereotypical mold of Boba Fett. Yeah, I could see why people would gravitate more to the bounty hunter, just because it kind of resembles characters in more modern games. You think of Mass Effect. There's a number of personas or characters in Mass Effect that you could just say, okay, that's the classic bounty hunter feel. Like Rex, I kind of feel like if anyone was a bounty hunter, Rex would fit that.
Definitely is.
Gears of War is another example. You're a guy running around in this heavy armor, and you've got a massive gun, or you've got your random gadgets to get you out of these different situations. And just, a lot of games, or a lot of gamers that might be coming to play this MMO for the very first time are going to gravitate towards something they're more familiar with. And then obviously the big burly guy with massive shoulder pads and armor and this big gun kind of is stereotypical from a lot of other games, but it makes it more comfortable for a player that might be playing the game for the first time.
So, looking at how they've got all these different kinds of game mechanics, and how they've kind of said that all the classes will have a lot of the, not same abilities, but they'll be able to affect your group the same way. So you've got, the Trooper has a healing spec, and turns out the Bounty Hunter has a healing spec too. Does that make sense in terms of what you think of when you think Bounty Hunter? Because for a lot of people, that doesn't seem to jive too well. I
don't know if it necessarily makes sense initially at first from a lore perspective. I know it does make sense from a game design standpoint, just because as a player, you do not want to be limited to not being able to participate in things just because you're pigeonholed into just strictly DPSing or strictly tanking or strictly healing. And any way you can open up those options for a player in an MMO, or expand their options so that a way they start playing the game and they come to find out, they realize, hey, I really enjoyed this tanking thing. I don't want to have to start all the way over just to do that. It gives them that freedom to do that. I think you could probably find some really extreme examples in the Star Wars universe. Well, you might have to really look to find something that would fit the lore, and for a bounty hunter that would be healing. But at the same time, it kind of opens the door for people who like to RP or roleplay. And it gives them the chance to say, hey, I'm a bounty hunter, but I was like a field medic before I did this kind of thing. And that's where all of my background knowledge of, healing people or aiding people helps. I don't know. How does it fit in the lore?
Well, I think when you look at it in terms of the, we've talked so much about the advanced classes. You got the power tech and the mercenary. We haven't really gotten a chance to talk about the different specs within each one of those trees. And within, I think it's the mercenary, has the bodyguard.
Yeah.
spec on it, so it only makes sense that if you're going to be protecting someone, you're not just going to stand in front of them and take the damage. If they take damage, you want to be able to get them either back into the game or to aid them somehow, keep them alive at the very least.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And from that perspective, it makes sense. But then also talking about how kind of making your own story, it opens up a lot of extra venues for straying from the typical, I was raised in a harsh planet, and now I've joined the Mandalorians on their crusade. Yeah. So you're getting more, like we've talked about in the past, more varied storytelling techniques than what we're used to with classic Star Wars.
So when it comes to the storyline of the Bounty Hunter, what are you expecting to see from it?
Well, having played the first, 10 levels, the first 10 levels essentially of the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, because you've got more of a hands-on impression than I do.
Yeah.
I've only got to play like in the whole PvP world. I forgot. You
did play as Bounty
I did actually heal a little bit, but
okay.
So you got to play 10 levels or so.
Yeah.
What were like some of the in the introduction of the game and the story? Like, what were some of the things that were thrown at you immediately?
They kind of write a story for you already. It's not a complete background, so people who want to write their character story will be able to, but they tell you why you are there. They say you're here to become a member of the Great Hunt. You're here to go on the Great Hunt and gain fame and glory for yourself and possibly get rewards from Mandalore, I think, was the gist of it.
Yeah.
So they kind of give you a little bit of history as to just how you wound up at the beginning of the game. And you meet the guy that's in charge of you. He's a master bounty hunter, been around the block, showing you kind of the ropes, like you're good, but you could be better.
See, and the other thing I feel like on that note is, with the story, they could take it into a direction where you can either be this really bad, mean, evil bounty hunter, or you could be kind of like the dog, the bounty hunter guy.
Yeah.
Like trying to help people out.
And that's the weird thing. You know, we talk about how we're playing as the light side, we're playing as the dark side. If you're playing Imperial, you can still do light side.
Yeah.
I think we both chose, for the most part, light side
pretty
responses.
nice to
we were the nicest assassin and bounty hunter you'd ever seen.
Huh? I mean, didn't you have to cut a lot of guys' heads off? And
I cut no heads off.
Okay.
I know a couple other guys did. They went through the whole game and were just like, please save me. Like, no.
Yeah.
I didn't. They were like, please save me. Okay. I'll do
So
it.
you're a very forgiving bounty hunter.
Yeah. But
so like there's going to be a lot of different directions they could take with the story, and it sounds like it's going to be one of those things that might start off slow a little bit at first, but then there's a lot of potential for growth.
That's what a lot of people said, was that it was a very slow burn, and I think
that's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. I was getting to that apex of how, you know, your starting zone really reaches a crescendo, and then you take off into the larger world, as Obi-Wan would say. But you know, I can see, like we talked about, going down that classic Boba Fett route of you become, you know, I guess the power tech is how we're classifying the Boba Fett style of bounty hunter, and how you're going to become one of the big Mandalorians, and you probably join with Mandalore in his crusade. We don't really know what his ultimate objective is. He was kind of a puppet of the Empire at first, but you could become, you know, what we see from Canderous Ordo in KOTOR and KOTOR 2 and some of the Knights of the Old Republic comic books. There's tons of Mandalorians in there. But alternatively, I'm looking forward to seeing the other way to go, where you're just kind of out for yourself. Maybe you're working for the Hutts instead, and you're just out to make a buck.
Well, there's a lot of different choices, and it's definitely enough to intrigue me personally. And I'd look to play the class at some point, just because I'd like to play through all the storylines, but it's one that's higher on the list for me, just because when you look at the whole complete package of the bounty hunter, you look at the different play styles of the bounty hunter, and you look at all the different trees or potential options from the different story mechanics with it. There's just so much there that intrigues me, that looks like it's going to be a great time. I can't wait to play that story.